Hi, my name is Gareth Benson from IP Assist. I'm an intellectual property and commercial lawyer, and this week on the Prosperity Show, we're talking big ideas, how to bring your idea into reality with intellectual property. I can't wait to join the voyage with Prosper, and see you then.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show, where we unravel the stories behind success, resilience, and the future of work. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today we're going to be diving into a world where creativity meets the law and innovation stands on the shoulders of intellectual property, where we're supporting those history makers, innovators, and the people with the big idea. Now, before we even get started, Gareth, please, have you got something you want to let our audience know?
I just want to say I stand with you, the history makers, shakers, and idea creators. But everybody's circumstances are different. So I need to qualify the legal advice is best to be engaged in person. So anything I say or will present to you today cannot be held against me in a court of law.
Absolutely. And thank you so much. I mean, now that we've got all the legalese out of the way, ladies and gentlemen, our guest today is the renowned Gareth Benson, who's the founding partner of IP Assist, a commercial and intellectual property law firm. Now, I know you're used to lawyers that bill you for every second they open their mouth, and having a lawyer on the show might actually just sound intimidating. No, they're not billing you. They're billing the Online Prosperity Show. But that's not even how he operates. Gareth brings a very fresh approach. He's been on both sides of the table, working with major organizations like the CSIRO, SBS, and the Australian Centre for the Moving Image before actually he launched IP Assist in 2010. And that's almost 10 years before the world changed into what it is today. But Gareth brings to the table, more than just legal jargon, as you will come to understand. What he brings is about seeing the potential in ideas and shaping them into assets, and then creating a solid foundation for entrepreneurs and creators alike. And he's no stranger to challenges of his own, both in the courtroom and in the world of intellectual property in and of itself. And he's made it a mission, or his mission particular, to protect ideas, because, as he often says, our ideas are our identity. And I can't wait to launch him onto those that are on a mission to make this world a better place. And today we're going to be pulling back the curtain on Gareth's journey, what drove him to pursue his path, and how he's handled the twists and turns of protecting the unprotectable. And what can we as entrepreneurs and innovators actually learn from his insights and the journey that he has embarked on. So I want you to stick with us, because I think by the end of this conversation, you might actually just see your own creative assets in a whole new light. Now, Gareth, I could go on and talk about things I know nothing about. Could you maybe take us back in the beginning? First of all, why intellectual property and why you?
Well, look, it's a great question, because every great question in the world, I believe, Prosper, begins with identity. Who are you? And who am I to be here speaking with you about the most important things, the crucible, the holy grail of what makes a great idea? Well, it began for me, back in country Gippsland in rural Australia, where as a young kid, I was using my imagination. I would sit in the backyard of our rustic home in grassy Gippsland, Latrobe Valley. And actually, the thing that I loved to do most was actually create ideas. I would actually create entire worlds that my brothers would play in. So for a very long time, I speak to you not here as a lawyer, but also as an idea maker and creator. When I went the long road from country Gippsland to university, I realized that if I wanted to pursue at university a career in the arts or humanities, it may be a long road. So I was lucky, studied hard, and became an attorney, a law, an arts, studied arts law at university, essentially because I was interested to continue to pursue ideas and ideas of purpose. Graduating as a commercial and intellectual property lawyer, I've got to say, I was also, I fell for the illusion of the illegal fraternity. Yes, it's a prestigious career. Yes, I had to study hard and work hard to get there. But the reality of corporate world and the corporate world at that time, for me, was not congruent to my identity. And so essentially, I, like many ideas entrepreneurs or business owners, I began on that path of seeking purpose, seeking fulfillment. So because it was very important for me on a daily basis to be working on something, or working in a way, or working on things that I truly believed in. I would say that took me another 5 years, and not to labor you with the war and peace of my entire journey, but I would say that, yes, around this time, about 15 years ago now, I would say I found that congruency, stepping out on my own from working in for the respected organisations like the CSIRO, who, were for over half a century have been creating amazing inventions such as, wireless, the WLAN technology in wireless created by our humble Commonwealth Scientific Research Organisation. And then moving across from renewable energy, science and information, mathematics, areas that I was exposed to, great idea makers and inventors and innovators. And then moving across into the media, working for SBS Television, Australia's only multicultural news channel. And in my humble belief, still, over a decade, I'm a producer of some of the great content, First Australians, that documents the Australian history with their First Nations people, through to amazing shows that you may have then seen on a world stage. That was also a great baptism of fire. But what truly was important for me was when I actually started my own business. I realized I wanted to be a captain. And what is a captain? A captain is, in my mind, the captain of their own ideas, a captain of their own ship, a captain of their own enterprise, a captain of their own business, a captain of their own purpose-driven enterprise. And why is that important for me? Because I am like them. I stand with the idea of makers, creators, and history shapers, those that wish to make a great impact in the world. And I've now been on that ship for a good 15 years, over a decade. And I would say I've been privileged to work with some amazing entrepreneurs, some amazing people across various sectors who are bringing their ideas into the world. And I am here to help and empower others to do the same.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for taking us on that voyage, Captain, because, I mean, just looking at where it all started, and you've taken us back to, Gippsland, here in Victoria. For those that are not quite well versed with the Australian map, it's semi-rural Australia, I think, although gentrification is now starting to sort of permeate in those sort of areas. But yeah, it is. Obviously, imagination would have been, the name of the game, because your backyard would have been maybe facing a kangaroo field or things of that nature. Am I correct?
The Strzelecki Ranges, if you're familiar with Gippsland, is that what? Basically, it looked out on mountains. My dad was a forester. Yeah, so it was a place of great imagination for me. Growing up in country Victoria.
Absolutely. So you became a captain long before you even knew that this was the actual thing, because you created worlds that your brothers liked to play in, and obviously you had to lead and show them where to go, who they had to be in that sort of space and things of that nature. Is that still the case? Are they still playing?
I would say that's 100% correct. That's where, when I look back, and I sometimes do this with, people that come to me, ask about what makes a great idea. What, is this an idea I should pursue in my business? I love taking people back to that special time, in consultation with them, about 7 years old, I always say. Because I find that that's where, for me, I was unbridled myself, without limits. I was my pure identity, and it was what I loved to do during that. I was a tragic role play game master, but I was inspired by the world around me, and I would use that, and I still help create worlds in which other people can play. I've still got a creative side, and I actually explore that in other business ventures. While we're here to talk about ideas in IP law, what I've found is that actually within that contains what I call my gold, right? Finding gold is really important in life, apparently, especially for a captain. But when we truly understand ourselves, we find that gold is within, and it's within the activities that we bring into the world. And quite simply, when I go back to that time, I actually recognize I was encouraging the gold in others, my brothers. And indeed, my most favorite client is one where I'm encouraging them to think deeply about their ideas, to bring their best ideas into the world, to find their gold, and to empower the opportunity that they create and bring into the world with their ideas.
Absolutely. Now, Gareth, we're only just 10 minutes or so into this conversation, and I think you've actually redefined the acronym IP. And if you would allow me to, sort of elaborate on that, I feel like you have defined it not from intellectual property, but to identity and purpose. And I think from then on, it then really stems into how you then went on and created your own firm. So my question here now is, what was the turning point that then got you to say, hey, I want to start my own firm? Because you were working in incredible projects, like you said, CSIRO, SBS, and all that stuff. Were there any particular experiences or sort of challenges that really pushed you towards building IP Assist?
Well, look, to be quite honest, I think what I found is our younger selves and then our young adult life is born with walking down many different paths. And I was lucky that I got to even walk down some of them, yes. But I also saw that there were barriers I worked for private sector and I worked for public sector, right? I worked for a commercial law firm, then I worked in-house in science and innovation, and then I worked, in the media. And do you know what? To be quite honest with you, that desktop life, that hierarchy of command, the lack of progress that sometimes, or the having to answer to another captain, a boss, perhaps, were all things that kind of combine to allow me to recognize that after a couple of years, a couple of different experiences, that it doesn't matter which sector I'm working in, this environment is stifling for me. It wasn't what the hierarchy of an office or a law firm or even a media station or a government department does not encourage ideas. You are there to do a job, play your role on the production line of whatever that organization is. And to be quite honest with you, I did not feel that was the place for me because I had too many ideas. I would find myself getting distracted at work. I would always accomplish what I had to do, but I found I would create time to think of a new idea that I could bring into the firm, or otherwise, I pretty soon learned that the people above me didn't necessarily want to hear my ideas. And then therefore I would resent them elsewhere. And so after, I would say these are the early years, right? You're really trying to find your way and you find your place. And it's important to belong too. And it wasn't that I didn't. I always did what I had to do. But I always wanted something more. And I believe that's where became apparent to me I wanted to be the captain of my own ship, so to speak. I wanted to run my own show.
Absolutely. Now that you've assumed your identity as full-on captain and IP Assist is now there, so obviously your purpose now is to help people to literally not get hurt, especially when it comes to their ideas and identity. What's the one thing that you wish entrepreneurs would understand about intellectual property, and why is it really crucial for their success?
Listen, that's a great question, because there are a lot of, like any sailor or captain will tell you, there are many myths, right, out there in business of to what even intellectual property is, or the importance of it in your business. And let me just qualify, I'm a commercial and intellectual property lawyer. So basically, I advise and have advised for over 2 decades business owners and entrepreneurs, now more recently, on where their most valuable ideas are, and through trademarks, patents, designs, copyright, and, as importantly, contracts, because making agreements prevent disagreements. And basically, in business, we are entering agreements on a daily, if not weekly basis. It's way that you grow a business. And so with business owners, as you probably can appreciate, when you start sailing out in your own business, there is a lot you've got to learn. You've got to be your own accounting department, marketer, your boss, captain, employee. You've got to be taking stock. You've got to be searching for opportunity. And it's a daily process, right? It's an hourly process. You get up every morning and you survey the sea or the scenery, and you realize, what do I have to do today? Yeah, it's it. And that first year, if you can identify this, is really harrowing, actually. The first year, I think, you go out of business. If you can survive that year, you can make it as a captain. I don't believe you're born one. I believe you have to earn your stripes. And we need to stay afloat. The reality is, a lot of people go out in business and they're bobbing ahead on a raft saying, but the reality is that it takes years to sometimes learn that. But to answer your question, the valuable ideas that you are bringing into the world via your business have value. That I stand for beyond anything else. The ideas that you make and create, that you're building into your boat, into your business and selling, have value. The repeat sales that you make, if you are offering a service, are based on your experiences as a consultant, as a business owner, as a coach. And that has a value. Quite simply, it's intellectual property. We come from a world that values property. The 4 walls are around us. The mortgage that you may own and owe someone else, a bank, is actually really valuable to many people. But so are your ideas. And we only need to look at some of the most successful brands in the world, franchises particularly, to see the power of intellectual property. What makes Canva a $55 billion success story, born in just 12 years? It's the ideas that Canva has brought into the world through their founders, and the service they have offered in the new age of now AI, but also digital media. They allow people to become designers and graphic designers and to design their own ideas. Essentially, that has a value, and so do your ideas. So one of the biggest learnings is that your ideas have value, so you should, as a prudent captain, protect them for the greater life of your business. One of the easiest ways to describe, you have a brand, for example, right? One of the easiest ways to describe intellectual property is to look first at your brand. People spend thousands of dollars, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars a year on marketing. But very few small business owners actually go to the effort of actually protecting their brand as a trademark. Now, we only need to look at someone like Mr. Richard Branson to see the value of a trademark. Virgin was born on a boat, literally. Richard Branson lived on a houseboat when he created the Virgin brand, which was, as we know, through his some of his excellent books, began, with actually magazine, a publishing magazine. But he grew that brand over time, and he continues to grow that brand, 50 years later. In Australia alone, Mr. Richard Branson owns 243 trademarks of the Virgin brand. because it holds value. It also allows him to go into many different marketplaces. But you can be sure that he owns that as an asset. Your trademark is the flag that you put on your ship. It is a badge of recognition that distinguishes you from all other traders in the marketplace. And therefore, it serves to protect it. It is the first and most visible asset of your intellectual property.
So from what I'm understanding, Gareth, and obviously this will be new to a lot of people. So you're saying your life story, your experience, your ideas, and everything that you bring to the table, your identity, the way you present your work and the results you get for the people have commercial value, and it deserves to be protected. So for those that are in the creative industries, they might just think, oh, it's always been like this. I'm not the first person to maybe create something like this. So their ideas not just become part of their own identity. So there would be a lot of misconceptions that obviously a lot of people.
Misconceptions. Yeah. Here's a couple of common ones, just at the very basic business level. I own my domain name, so therefore I own the name in the marketplace. Wrong.
That I know.
Yes. A domain name is a license for 12 months, 18 months, maybe 3 years over a particular name. It does not give you legal protection of the use of that name. I can't just start up with a URL. I could try, and call it, and call it Virgin Marketing. You can bet your bottom dollar you'll hear from Virgin Enterprises, because it's happened to not one, but two of my clients before. When your domain name does not give you legal protection of your name, neither does your business name registration, neither does your company name registration. Only a trademark does. And therefore, yes, everybody in business has value of those ideas, but it actually begins at the top with your brand. Your brand should be protected, because I can't tell you in the 20 years I've been practicing how many people have not only found their ideas have been taken, their copyright, but also their name. And so one thing that I would just say at the very beginning of this journey into the wonderful world of ideas and intellectual property is that there are specific kinds of rights associated with different intellectual property. The legal definition of intellectual property is a collection. It's a collection of a product of the mind or intellect. It's actually a bundle of rights, a bundle of economic rights that subsist in copyright, trademarks, patents, designs. And intellectual property is a field that protects our ideas and empowers us to earn a pecuniary right, an economic right, from the things that we bring into the world. So therefore, for the small business owners, or the captains, those ideas are worthy of your protection because they hold economic value.
But you see, the thing is, with the world we live in today, Gareth, I know you started off when, computers were just a computer. Now, computers are maybe your phone and everything else, and it's really hard to keep up with a lot of things with the rise of AI, the blockchain, digital transformation. And I can only assume IP law is evolving fast. You can't police and track anything else that's happening halfway across the galaxy. And I just came into a statement or a statistic that Google, for all this time, has only managed to index 5% of all of the internet. Now you can only imagine.
Wow. Yeah, index only 5%.
Only 5% up until recently. So you can imagine we've been feeding, learning, growing off of just 5% of the internet. How then can people keep up with all these changes? And obviously,
it's a really valid question, a really, really valid question. And I'm very interested in AI, which I know we'll no doubt talk about. Because, we live in a cusp of a change of time where businesses used to be known in accountant terms as plant and equipment or bricks and mortar. That was the sole value of the assets up until, you would say, the turn of this century. Still, there were factories and conveyor belts, and before that, there was, agricultural machinery and livestock. But we now live in a world of click and mortar, Ever since that small thing called the internet, which has been upending our lives every year under Moore's law since 1996,
we're now in the mouse age.
We're in a mouse age, and we are, we are caught behind our mouses now, like literally. But that means we need to also acknowledge that the way that we do business and the way that we create ideas is different. Intellectual property actually is an area of law that was born 400 years ago during an age of enlightenment. And it was the advent of the printing press that actually brought about, through the Statute of Anne, the first laws which became known as copyright. It was innovation that brought about the need for the change in law. And that was the first time, an empowering time, in which authors, writers, artists, poets, and philosophers were given a pecuniary right to own the things they had created, because for the first time in history, those ideas could be published in a way that they could be shared with the masses. Now, fast forward 400 years later into the age of the mouse, as you correctly describe it, it's just accelerated even further. And when we used only 2 years ago, this small tool called ChatGPT, what I came to realize, it was the birth of a new printing press. Never in the world's history did we have every person have access to such a powerful printing press, because it can not only print your ideas, but it can also help you collaborate and evaluate and actually accelerate those ideas to delivery. Just a short note on the IP, on the digital age, I wrote a book called I.D.E.O.L.O.G.Y in about it began as a resource for my clients, because the amount of conversation I have is what makes a great idea, but also what should I protect, when should I protect it, what's a trademark, what's a patent, what is it all worthwhile? And I thought, rather than fielding these questions on a weekly basis, I realized I needed to change too. And that was when I took a more empowered stance to what I did, because that's my purpose, right? To empower others to take the great journey. Is one of the things that have been with me since Grassy Gippsland. And so I wrote a book about it, and it was originally called I.D.E.O.L.O.G.Y, how to protect your ideas in the digital age. But just this year, with the advent of the AI, I realized I needed already to do a second edition. And that's what I've sort of done with I.D.E.O.L.O.G.Y 2.0 here, which is probably not going to show too clearly on this, but I'll put in the show notes. But basically, it builds on this idea that we need to be captains. The great sailors. I love to look at history. I love to look at the past. I look at the past in my own life, but I look at the past of the world. And I realize we're more similar than we think, that we have actually stood on the shoulders of giants. Every generation that comes before us pushes us forward. Sometimes it's a slippery slope, but ultimately it moves forward. And so when I think about those ideas and the history behind them, I realize that we are the most important and valuable asset that we can bring into the world. We are the idea makers and creators that stand on the shoulders of giants. And I.D.E.O.L.O.G.Y 2.0 is that we can actually harness this printing press, this most advanced we've ever had access to. If we are congruent with our identity, we can bring our ideology, our great idea, into the world. And that's what I truly stand for. I'm about people in business really thinking carefully about the ideas that they're creating, and to create and solve the great problems of tomorrow, today.
Absolutely. And thank you so much. I quite like that. And as you have so eloquently said, we'll put the links to I.D.E.O.L.O.G.Y 2.0 and the first one in the show notes, so that people can obviously embark on that journey. Now, you're raising a very interesting factor here because, when people go on a journey to get started, half of the time it starts off in some sort of a garage or in some sort of a secluded part of the world, and everything is very personal and very emotional, which then, like I have said, it's part of your identity, it's part of your your purpose, and that's really what IP really is all about, because you're iterating, you're changing, you're making things happen, and the creative journey can be very deeply personal. And obviously IP issues often go beyond the legal, where somebody's saying, but I started this and I just didn't put it out there, but it was part of what I was doing 5 years later in my garage or whatever. How do you then approach cases where there's an emotional connection, and do you maybe find it challenging to separate the law from the actual passion of what the person is?
Yeah, look, hindsight's a wonderful thing, and even whether you're talking about, the Apple story, or the two friends that go out to business, who then end up, the idea may have been evolved from a third party, and they are two of the world's biggest brands. That's their stories, and they both ended up in conflict at some point, and the growth tends to also push boundaries, I think, and relationships. What I've recognised is that partnerships are difficult to manage in the best of times. That most people want to be captains, even when they're on the same boat, which is not uncommon in the history of time. There's also many sailors that want to be captains, but have no idea how to do it and may disrupt a ship. So, these are all scenarios that have played out. And I feel that what's really important is to protect yourself. One way to do that is with agreements, because agreements prevent disagreements. And now I'm going to flip it around on its head while we're talking ideas. I'm going to talk about the importance of contracts. Contracts we enter every single day of our lives. Contracts in business provide certainty. They prevent disagreement. They not only can help contain and secure your ideas, but they are most important documents that can help you keep your ideas safe. Any founder should begin with a founder's agreement between two parties to outline roles and obligations. The reason is that they're often starting a company together, and those obligations need to be well understood between both parties. Sometimes that might include shareholders and various other parties that join the ship as well. Once that founding team has been enshrined in contracts, different agreements, founder agreements, shareholder agreements, you actually can set up your company, and the company will have a legal personality, a legal form. But also what's important is the people, the sailors that join your boat, need to protect yourself there too. Not everyone has the best intention, and sometimes intentions change. But being careful about who you invite on your boat, making sure that they sign very watertight agreements with respect to intellectual property, how you exit them from your ship, termination provisions, and being important, the distinction between employees and independent contractors. The likelihood is that over the lifespan of a business of 10 years that you will hire multiple independent contractors who will come and work on your boat and work on your ship. You need to be very clear about when they exit and what they exit with. That's also about retaining your valuable intellectual property. So, in short, contracts are used by captains to build certainty between themselves and others, so people have a clear pathway and really know their roles and responsibilities while they are on your boat. And should they no longer there be an agreement between parties, then the captain should have an ability to terminate that relationship and remove them from the vessel.
Absolutely. And this happens quite a lot. Like we spoke about the garages and people just sort of getting started. How half of the time I usually come across people and, you know, when they come to me, like you mentioned, you know, they think, oh, we've got the domain name, we're getting started and things like that. And I'm like, wait a minute, we're going to be marketing you to an international sort of market. Is your IP protected? What if somebody swipes your idea and things of that nature? And they usually think of bringing in an IP lawyer as just an icing on the cake. At what point can somebody actually start engaging, you know, somebody, you know, of your stance?
Well, I feel it's about a journey of growth, right? So I speak to business owners at all sorts of levels, but you know, the ones that are on that pathway of growth, I can be of most value to. Again, another reason I read the book, because it's important to understand the landscape before you get there. I write about the ideas compass. You know, every captain needs a compass, and it all begins with a great idea, but you need to develop that idea. And then at a certain point, once that idea has been developed and you have a customer base, then it's really important to protect those ideas. And I feel that those that are truly on that full pathway of growth, those that are sailing and taking their ideas into international waters, you're talking about the growth of an organisation that might take place over 3 to 5 years, sometimes shorter. You know, Canvas Story is remarkable, 12 years and $55 billion company. But not everyone's going to build that kind of a boat. Let's be honest. The market, Australian market, is 80% small to medium business owners. These are mums and dads that have a good idea, that have a skill, and they're offering their ideas for others, either products or services, across numerous different industries. All of these businesses have valuable intellectual property. And I believe the fundamentals of IP protection is protecting your brand, ensuring you have terms and conditions, contractual terms with your service, your customers, and your other service providers. And you know, and depending on the business, you may have also designs, patents, but you have also what's called copyright. Copyright is all of the ideas. Copyright is the right that it subsists in automatic protection. You need to put certain protection mechanisms on place. They need to be quite visible. On your front page of your website, you should be using the copyright symbol. You know, you can be using that as an indication that it is yours. You can be using the trademark registration to protect your brand name legally. You can be putting terms and conditions on your websites and serving them to your customers when you engage in each and every one. These are things that every SME can do to protect their intellectual property, because agreements prevent disagreements, and they also embody on how you get paid for your services. That's really an area that I operate a lot in. And those basics can be as little under than $5,000 to put in place. You know, I'm talking about having a robust service agreement with your customers, about protecting the trademark for the next 10 years of your business, and to protect the other copyright. Because if you don't protect your property, no one else will. Leaving these things exposed is basically opening your doors of your property to let other people walk on it. Using these 3 simple things that I mentioned before, the copyright symbol on your website, terms and conditions, and a defined service agreement, and registering your trademark, puts a ring fence around your property to protect you and anyone that walks in the door of your business in some respects, because you are protecting your IP. Now, not everyone is on that journey, but most people are. You know, if you're listening to this call and you're at least you've started a business, then you will at least need those 3 things. But where I become very strategic is when helping those canvassers, helping those businesses that have got investment or gaining investment. Because one of the first things that a Shark Tank or other Dragon's Den will ask is like, have you protected it? What am I investing in? Why would I give you $50,000 into your business if you haven't even protected your idea, the name, the idea as a patent or a design, or at least protected it in some way? What am I investing in? And if you walk down into the world of franchising, like Janine Ellis and Boost Juice, that started off on a kitchen table, you can bet your bottom dollar she had every single aspect of that trademark Boost Juice covered. You can bet your bottom dollar that before that she took it, to 300 outlets worldwide, that she had very robust agreements with each of her franchisees who paid her money to build her brand. using her process that was protected as trade secret. So these are, when you're on the pathway of growth, and I could list them off. Yellow Brick Road, Mark Boros, personal brand entrepreneur, after finding Wizard Home Loans, finds a brokerage in financial services, which is in every state and territory of Australia. Jim's Mowing in Garden, a franchise that basically allows tradies to buy into a process. This is all valuable intellectual property, And so when you go on that other area, you're actually talking about captains that have built an entire fleet, an armada for other captains to come and join for a nice princely sum, mind you, to join the fleet. And that's where you see, the growth of IP. And it is a big business, not just in fast food chains. Television, Big Brother, anyone, Australian Idol, America's Got Talent. Television franchises, a huge business, and I've overseen some of them. I saw from BBC, saw Top Gear come to Australia and the deal with SBS Television. It was the licensing the IP from Fremantle Media for Australia to run its own show. They had to follow certain rules. They had to pay some princely sums, but that's the value of IP.
Absolutely, because like you said, it becomes an asset that you can always leverage off of and things of that nature. But, you're mentioning some really big names, some really household recognizable Boost Juice, Canva, all of that stuff out there, which obviously people can recognize. But you've actually started empowering the underdog. I mean, you work with startups and even indigenous organizations, and you're obviously helping them safeguard their ideas. Why is this work important to you personally?
Yeah, well, look, I'm currently now, since COVID times, located on the frontier in Northern Australia, Darwin, and I've been exposed a little bit more to the First Nation story here in the Northern Territory. But it's interesting, I'm still working in IP, and just this morning I'm doing some work with the Desert Knowledge Australia, located in Alice Springs, and they've developed an incredible education program for First Nations men, called Codes for Life, to help reinstill a stronger sense of identity, championed by a fantastic man named Michael Little, who is a well-known Territorian, a First Nations man, a football player, and, family from Alice Springs. And we have been very aware that he has been building important intellectual property for himself and his countrymen for a long time. But DKA Australia, a not-for-profit organisation, has to have a relationship with Michael to offer these men's programs. So IP touches not-for-profit sector as much as it does, the big end of town, if you want to see it like that. IP is also in purpose-based enterprises. I mean, it's Intrepid Travel, Patagonia. Who gives a crap? These are all brands that have been built as social enterprises that equally have valuable intellectual property. When you sign up to be a B Corp, you're actually entering an IP licensing system that is regulated, strict rules to become a B Corp, and you still have to pay a license fee to become a B Corp, which is an IP licensing system. Okay? And it's the same is true on the ground. It doesn't matter if you're running a mum and dad workshop where you're selling products, and so, that could be, I deal with all sorts of different entrepreneurs like this. I can mention my clients in Western Australia, called Scaff Kit. They a husband and wife team that develop scaffolding tools, and they've been selling them online for over a decade. So they have a valuable brand. They also have some valuable designs. They are every different industry. And I'm just reinforcing that even here in the Territory, sometimes it's like the 1980s, the view that people have of around IP, or even the willingness to, protect it. Up until a decade ago, they'd probably realised, many I've heard around town didn't even believe in having a website. But, the point is that whether you're selling a glass of lemonade at a lemonade stand, or you're offering a juice to the rest of Australia, what's the difference between those two things? Difference between Boost Juice and a lemon stand is they all both actually began on the kitchen table. Both the Boost Juice journey is about 1 to millions, and it's also about the value they placed on their IP and their vision to take their ideas, their IP, to the people. I don't actually see a huge difference between the small sailor who sets out with a grand vision from a kitchen table or a garage. These are people that we actually know as Australians. Canberra are one of them. But they are not a huge difference. The difference is the vision, passion, the ability, the willingness and ability to leverage their ideas to the greatest number of people. And that is in many fields of products and services, but also in terms of making impact to the world. Entrepreneurs are often asked what their big, hairy, audacious goal, what's their grand vision? And many will say, I want millions of people. It all begins with that planning, the strategy. And it actually is the difference between the solo lemonade stand owner and those that own entire franchise of the same lemonade stand all over the world.
Absolutely.
The only difference is the vision and the ability to leverage their ideas through intellectual property.
Absolutely. And I can't thank you enough for obviously, taking us on this journey, because so many people lose out. I mean, it's hard enough to get started in business. Most businesses don't go past the 3-year mark, let alone the 5-year mark, and only to have gone through 10 years to realize that somebody has been sitting on your IP for all this time, and you have to start all over again. Now, if Captain Gareth calls all hands on deck, where should everybody congregate, especially on the internet? Where can people find you?
I'm happy to meet every captain on the bridge, of course, because we're all equals, and we are all equals. I serve captains, and I'm here to serve, and you can find me online. I actually have a number of resources that are complimentary. If you sign up to my website, ipassist.com.au, you can actually get a complimentary copy, an online complimentary copy of this book. It's a gift that I have decided to give away. I shouldn't, because you always should put a value on your ideas. But I do. I give it away because I know that those that truly wish to go on that journey will visit the website. And I offer sometime a 45-minute consultation on Mondays and Tuesdays to spend 45 minutes with me in discussion of your idea. Okay? And so I'm offering that offer. It is for your readers, viewers, and it is also for those that truly wish to go on that journey. I also have a number of other video links, blogs there on different facets of things we've talked about, from AI and IP through to, how to begin with the very basics, the 3 things I mentioned, terms and conditions, trademarks, and of course, having a really good understanding of the copyright you have in your business. Those 3 things are at the very least what you could be doing to empower yourself on that journey, because agreements will prevent disagreements, and not only around your IP, but also, the other ways you conduct yourself. A captain knows that the sea and the journey is fraught with danger. It's what makes it an adventure. And it's probably the greatest adventure of your entire life. So it makes sense to understand and learn from other fellow captains along the way, and I'm here to serve you as you journey forth to sail into the blue ocean of your success.
Absolutely. Apparently, when you're sailing and you see an island, it's usually a little bit too late.
Yeah, that's right. And look, there's always going to be sharks circling.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll definitely make sure that all those links are in the show notes, and people can actually really start working towards protecting, first of all, their own identity, their purpose, and eventually their intellectual property along the way. Now, Gareth, I mean, you took us on a journey, man. Like you started us off to the days of when you were a world builder, 7 years of age, and your family and your brothers and siblings were participating in the worlds that you are building. You were building then, and it seems you've continued with that journey, and you're now building worlds for other people so they can build worlds for their own customers in a sort of safer environment. And I quite like the statement that you keep repeating, that agreements will definitely prevent disagreements. But at that age of 7, you probably didn't know a day like this would happen. I mean, obviously, being on the online prosperity show, that's a highlight of your career. But, a day like you helping people be, do, and have a happier existence, you just thought you're building your world, you're sharing your ideas with the world and things like that. If you would maybe, let's just say you're looking back, and if you could go and give that younger Gareth one piece of advice, knowing what you now have become and who you are while he's busy building this world, what would you say to young Gareth?
Look, that is a really great question. It's actually an answer I have only recently reflected on, and I would say it's follow your story. At the end of the day and the beginning of it, our story is the only thing we ever take with us. And I think in life, we're given the opportunity, many opportunities, to follow our true story. And we should take that, because you never know what you may create when you truly follow your own story.
I'm gonna receive that a little bit, because your life story and your experience have so much value that it becomes your identity. And with that identity, you can then find your own purpose. And from that, your IP is derived.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the end of the day, our stories contain our gold. When you truly listen back to those stories that you tell of yourself, of also and the true experiences that you shared when you were 7 years old, I believe you can find the gold within. And they lie waiting there for those that truly want to find it.
Absolutely. Now, obviously, it would be remiss for me to not ask, what's next, Gareth? I mean, obviously, you're at the at the precipice of something extraordinary here, and it's uncharted waters. What's next? What can
Uncharted waters, yeah. Well, look, it's a great question, because we don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. Where the world's going to go into more uncertainty, I feel, and that we're going to also be competing against one of the most serious inventions ever to kind of to ever be made available, not only to us as business makers or creators, but also be given to governments and military. And I think the world's in for a ride. However, what's important for me and how to navigate those uncertainty is exactly what we're talking about. I believe purpose will guide our way. Our purpose will guide our way. And that we have to be prepared as business owners, and the students and entrepreneurs of tomorrow need to be prepared, as they tell us, to have several different careers. So it's about lifelong learning. And I think for me, it's actually being secure in the knowledge of your identity, will be able to overcome the obstacles that tomorrow will present, and just to enjoy the journey. Absolutely. I plan to do much more sailing, and next month I'm off to Singapore Comic-Con to release a comic that I actually wrote about as a childhood dream. So I'm keeping on following my story, my friend, and I encourage everyone else to do the same.
Absolutely. Well, if you want to protect those ideas that you're going to be sharing, in Singapore, I know a guy. Okay, so
fantastic. Happy to meet fellow captains on the journey.
Fantastic. No, I can't thank you enough, Gareth, for the time that you.
I salute you, sir. Thank you for your time and for allowing me to share just some of my story here today.
Absolutely. And I mean, as we wrap up this episode, for those that are watching right now on the Online Prosperity Show, first of all, thank you so much. I want you to really, really, really applaud yourself for taking the time to learn something new, and especially just having an idea that your own identity and your own purpose have so much value. I mean, the legal people call it IP and things of that nature. But if you just remember that whatever you're going through, whatever going through in your business, your life, and everything else has got so much value out there that you can leverage off of. Because I think Gareth has actually shown us that behind every trademark, every patent, every protected idea lies a story of resilience, innovation, and sheer grit. And maybe, I just say, maybe his journey being the captain and everything else has actually sparked something in you, a desire to safeguard your own ideas and even bring them into a world with greater confidence. As you can see behind him, he's got all these light bulbs. Everyone has an idea. You might have a light bulb moment. You might not know what to do with that information. Reaching out to people like Gareth or the resources that we're going to be putting in the show notes below would actually put you on a journey that would completely change the horizon that you can see, as you become the captain of your ship. So if today's conversation resonated with you, I encourage you to maybe share this with somebody who could use a boost in understanding the power of intellectual property. It could be a friend, a daughter, a son who started, on the journey to create something, or they're working on something tucked in the garage there. Just forward this video or this podcast to them, because you literally might have saved them years and years and years of hard work trying to protect their idea. And of course, while you're at it, why don't you hit that subscribe button so you do not miss out on any of the conversations that really uncover the hidden stories behind successful entrepreneurs. And if you're still watching, just watch the next video, because the next guest might actually change your life. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your day. Bye for now.